Summer has turned to autumn, Twitter has turned to X, and we are back with the finale of Series 3. Can you believe it? It's been 11 weeks already.
Sad times. But I am very excited for this final episode. It's a real treat as we're talking with Ben Elliot, who, amongst other things, as you'll hear about, is the founder of the UK Church Comms Collective, something we've mentioned before and both really benefited from.
Yeah, and our chat with Ben is something that we found really inspiring. So grab your hot drink and settle in for, can you believe it, episode 30 of Gourds and Pomegranates.
We are very excited to have with us today Ben Elliot, who runs Be Creative and has tons of experience working with Church Comms, and I'm sure many of you will know him from the Church Comms Collective, which Ben founded, and we're pretty sure he will be talking a lot about today. So Ben, to get us started, we have our ever important and very, very important quickfire questions to ask you to allow our listeners to get to know you. So probably, and I do maintain this is probably one of the most important questions that someone can ask, what is your favourite biscuit?
What a way to start a chat here, Anna. Right. Thank you for having me here. I don't want to offend anybody. I'm not a biscuit man. Biscuits don't strike a chord with me. Yeah, sorry. But I am sweet tooth, so a chocky bar, if you put some Lindt ball chocolates out, I'm a very happy man. Biscuits, no, that's for my nan. That is. There you go.
So how about chocolates that have got bits of biscuit in them? Like, is there crossover potential here?
Yeah, that's cool. As long as the chocolate ratio needs to outweigh the biscuit ratio, and then we're good. I'm all for mixing it up, but yeah, just got to get that balance right. Yeah.
Well, it's been great to have you on, Ben.
yeah. See you later.
Okay, actually, no, I'm gonna add to this as well. What about savoury biscuits, so like cheese and biscuits?
Oh, good question.
Oh, do you know what? I did really used to enjoy this, literally like a Jacobs and all that kind of stuff. However, under the doctor's orders, I'm on a healthy lifestyle right now. So I'm not doing cheese and biscuits. I'm not actually doing chocolate unless it's a birthday or Christmas. So it's just like something I love. I'm just trying to be really good. But yeah, you can't go wrong with the Jacobs biscuit with a bit of brie, a bit of camembert, can you? So, yeah. And again, my wife loves all things kind of crispy, crunchy biscuits, all that kind of stuff. And I do the chocolate and everything else. So, it's a match made in heaven there, because we're always happy to hand over respective things. So.
I was going to say, we're about biscuit unity here. So.
Yeah.
Cool. I bet if I ever get invited on again, I'll read up on my biscuits.
No, it's interesting to hear, people's opinion, whether they're right or wrong. But no, that's lovely. On to a slightly more related question then. What is your favourite social platform?
Currently, without a doubt, Facebook, just because it's been around so long. It's so good at connecting people. It's still the biggest platform there is. It's the easiest way to build groups. It's the easiest way to share. It connects generations. I've got people that younger friends of mine, 20 years my junior, that are on there, and I've got my my grandparents on there. So it covers that smattering. And I was actually thinking, you know what? A part of me, obviously, none of us are on it anymore, but there's something about MySpace which just holds this classic thing in the back of my mind of actually setting the foundations. And my first experience of being social was on that platform, and that for me has then shaped things. And I think people who are on Facebook now, who have never experienced that kind of the emergence of social media, as it were, there was an exciting dawning of like, oh my goodness, we're connecting for the first time using the internet. And that's how old I am. And it was an amazing thing. And for me, Facebook is still...
Okay, you didn't say Friends Reunited.
No, didn't go down there, man. But I guess it was the music aspect that kind of brought me in via MySpace, I guess, as well. But Facebook still, that's my. If I had to have one platform, I'd just be on there.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Do you have any favourite podcasts? Are there any that you sort of regularly tune into each week, or that you kind of listen ardently?
I wish there was. As a father of three, the time I get to listen into things, to be honest, I love music. So whenever I get time in the car or time on a run, it tends to be, more often than not, I go to music just to kind of unwind. However, that said, There are a few. I mean, I listen to the pro church tool stuff with Brady Shearer, without a doubt. A lot of what British church communicators talk about will probably be influenced by those guys at some point. And the main one I would actually listen to sometimes on a run over music would be the Founders podcast. If you come across that, it's and I've forgotten the name of the guy who runs it now, but basically he does the heavy lifting so you don't have to, and he reads books about core founders, business leaders. There was an amazing one the other day about the founder of Patagonia and just the culture of the mentality of how these guys have set up businesses, set up organizations, their ethos and their management style and the way they go about things. And it's absolute gold. It saves you reading. Sometimes it's great to sit down and read a book, isn't it, over weeks? And sometimes it's like, okay, I just want to know the best bits, and he does a great job at digesting that, and that's been really helpful for me, definitely.
Yeah,
that's cool. I'll put links to those in the description.
I've got 5 in my favourites on Spotify, and obviously this is one of them as well. So
there we go. He's redeemed himself from the biscuit thing.
And then finally, gourd or pomegranate?
Pomegranates. Definitely.
Straight up. No explanation. That's fair enough.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I don't know if I've actually ever tried
fair
a gourd.
enough. So Ben, tell us. No, that's fair. That's fair. So tell us about your background, and a bit about what you do today and how you got to this point. Cool.
Job interview time, eh? How are you where you are today? Do you know what? I'm thankful for where I am today. That's what I want to start out with. Praise to God, just the journey that where I am. I would never have ever thought that I would be where I am today, and I'm thankful for every day I get to talk to people like yourselves and talk about things that I'm passionate about, which is not everyone has that luxury, so that's really cool. My journey, I'm a Lincolnshire lad, grew up in the Lincolnshire Fens, and I just wanted to be like my dad, who's a police officer. So my dream was to become a policeman, and my teacher said you should definitely do a degree before you do it. Make sure you got something under your belt. And I was like, oh, okay, if I have to. Last minute, dragged my way through kind of clearing and got into do a communication studies degree in Sheffield, which is where I now am based. And that was like, oh, that's just filling time where I thought I'm either going to become a policeman or a rock star. And the rock star thing clearly didn't happen. And neither did the police thing. I ended up working in the control room for a few years, but it just didn't sit well to actually go on to be a bobby. And whilst I was working for the police, I got an amazing opportunity. My wife was working for a communications consultancy, and she got asked to go to Australia on a 6-month secondment, and I took a career break to go. And in that process of meeting her manager, who was a Christian, and running a company which provided comms to basically to the pension sector, ultimately, to FTSE 100 and 250 firms. And he liked me, which I was very grateful of. And he sent us to Australia, and I actually worked for him in business development. And when we arrived in Australia, we got off the plane in Sydney, and we went straight into these meetings, and Tony was there, who was my boss. And he sat us down in this very nice hotel room and put out in front of us these 14, there were 7 for each of us, of these, it was like a supercharged Why Jesus book, this heavy duty, big book, magazine style read, super just breaking down the history of like Judaism, Christianity, everything, and then going through to the faith elements as well. It was just perfect. And he was like, okay, you're here on business, and here's what you got to do. But I want you to find 14 people of peace to give these books away to. And I was like, oh my goodness, it was the intersection of faith and business. And I thought, how is that possible? And that flipped my mind then on, thinking, the whole concepts of work and worship and stuff, and what that looks like. And when I came back to the UK, after a couple of years working basically between Australia and the UK, I decided to start my own business then, just providing services so I could work it around my family life. And cutting a long story short, pre-pandemic, I kind of got a bit fed up with the corporate clients that I was working with, and I started doing a little bit of church communications, and for my church, the Well in Sheffield, and that kind of, we'll talk about the collective obviously in a bit, but it kind of was the first foray of taking the professional secular comms and training and stuff I'd done and applying it into a faith context and having that kind of incentive behind it and that purpose. And I went on to I had a chat one day with a previous guest, I believe of yours, Laura Trinia, who was at CPO as the managing director.
Yeah.
And I became head of innovation at CPO, and then during COVID things happen, and everything happened in it. And there was a great need in the local church, and I felt like it was a time to actually lay down my personal ambitions and just serve the church. So I worked as head of comms for the Well. And then it led me on. I knew that would be a season. And back in February this year, I stepped into doing Be Creative full time. And the ultimate objective of that is to create a sustainable business that is driven by integrity and faith, to help with the skills we have to help businesses flourish, and help charities do well. And ideally that then the funds and things we're making from this allow us to invest back into, say, churches and charities which don't necessarily have the kind of actually genuine budgets that are needed to do things. That's the heart. And ideally, again, we'll come on to this, but like looking at ways that we could create a sustainable future for the Church Comms collective to actually upskill and raise up a new generation of people passionate about communicating within the church. So this is your life. There you go. That's kind of my journey to where we are.
And where do you see yourself in 5 years?
5 years?
I'm joking. You don't
I can totally answer that, I think. It's a good question. Do you want me to answer that, Joe?
Go on.
5 years' time.
Yeah, do it.
5 years' time, I'd love to have a team of 30 people working for Be Creative, delivering amazing solutions. And I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that somehow facilitating. Let's dream big. Let's say in 5 years' time, £1 million of revenue going into the Church Comms collective to bless churches and raise up the next generation. Yeah, that's the dream.
Yeah, that's really cool. And it's good to have that sort of clear goal, but at the same time, the word somehow in there is important to me, because it's like, this is what we want to do. We need to have this aim towards, but at the same time, whatever God brings along, that's the way that we're going to take it. So that's really exciting. So.
Yeah, I think, one of the things I've learned in the past is it's so easy to pretend and put this face on and say, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing here. And the reality is actually, I think when we actually go, you know what, this is brand new territory for me. I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. Who can I link with? Who can I connect with and stuff is so important. So that's the thing, dreaming big on this stuff. Like there's a person out there that could make the reality I just spoke about happen tomorrow. There's huge funds out there that could go, we'll give you £1 million because we want to actually see churches thrive rather than like clinging on to survive. We could actually do that, and we could, you could actually look at people like us and other Church Comms leaders to kind of go, okay, great. How can we invest that and see a huge return on actually connecting, loving communities well and sharing Jesus well? So, the potential is there. It's the willingness to have people to actually get, for people to be able to understand the power of what can be done when resources are released.
Yeah, for sure. And finding the people who have got those skills and resources who really believe in a vision which aligns with yours, rather than having to compromise all the way. Yeah. So I'm aware you mentioned about going to Australia, and I'm just curious, this isn't something we've asked you before, but even then, were there any obvious differences you noticed in the sort of the comms landscape between Australia and the UK? Or is it really similar?
I was fortunate enough to live in central Melbourne, and I guess it's probably comparative to elements of central London, and there was I guess there was a willingness to invest in the churches. The church we were part of was called City on the Hill, and they were a 3-year-old church plant, but they were really investing in worship team, in their outward communications, and their welcome, and actually creating really easy streams to get into the groove of discipleship structures. And they did a good job of that. And again, Aussie kind of, just loads of people with a passion to do it well. I mean, they met in a cinema in central Melbourne, and it was awesome. This huge, like probably, I don't know, it was probably a 700-800 seater screen, and they had 2 guys who were passionate about video, and each sermon series, they got these dedicated like epic video trailers, and you just sat there and like, I'm in a movie experiencing something, and it's tangibly bringing into life. Yeah. This then effectively they did very good kind of TED Talk sermon stuff, which was like actually genuine gold dust that you could take away. And I remember that relationship between this is contemporary for people who would work, this isn't typical space for a church, and they totally leveraged the things that were available to them. And I think that's something that I've seen in those churches, and that's that city centre, big city kind of stuff. Rural Australia obviously will be similar to what we face here in terms of local people serving their locality with the best heart and best intentions.
Yeah, Yeah, but not the budgets to match.
Yeah.
I think, like, it's very exciting to hear. I mean, I'd love to have a church in a cinema, but to hear you talk about it, it's making me think there's nothing wrong with giving people a platform to deliver on the giftings that God's given them, but also to make our life of faith and the experience of church so sensory in terms of like it being an experience. And so I feel from a UK perspective, and probably more a rural perspective of where I am at the minute, that is so avoided because we shouldn't be doing that because that's not right. But like just hearing you talk about it, it's like that sounds so exciting, and I bet you've probably, even though it was quite a while ago, you still feel that emotion that experience was for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally. I mean, it changed my perspective of what it is, and I guess it's ultimately about us bringing our gifting, isn't it? And you know, if someone within the church is amazing at, I don't know, let's say running kids camps, of course they're going to be the go-to person to say, "Would you be interested in running a summer camp at the church?" Or an amazing chef is like, "Great, would you be up for using your skills to teach the volunteers to make something, whatever?" And I think, you know, if you've got a videographer amongst you who's got a talent and things, then wow. And you know that we will have heard this from, like I said, like from Brady Shearer, people like that. You know, the gospel message never changes, but the format in which we communicate it does. And actually, in leveraging things like video, obviously, is an immersive communication experiences. I mean, the next big thing will be, I think, you know, a couple of years' time, if not sooner, we'll obviously be talking about the severe and exciting advancements in like VR technology and what that looks like in terms of immersive church experiences. And you know, part of a Sunday talk could actually be wearing a headset where we collectively walk through the streets of Bethlehem as part of the Advent journey and actually see this is a typical kind of street scene of where this might happen, and what do you think this, you know, like the immerse, what would the smells be like, what the noises, what
there's going to be a reaction against that
hugely. And that's good. Like we need the contrast, we need stuff, and you know, there's some people that you know, with every good reason and merit, won't embrace, and there's no need to embrace every single option there is out there. What we do need to do though is, you know, we need to, for those that should. I think, you know, I think we can choose to embrace things when the opportunity arises. But there's certainly can't just sit back and do nothing. So if you're not using the latest forms of tech, then you better be using the traditional kind of approaches in a superb way.
Like Facebook.
My humble opinion. No, I'm in like even more old school. You know what I mean? Like if you're not on social and you're not on web and stuff. So how can you use print in the most engaging way to reach your locality and your community?
No, for sure, 100%.
Yeah.
I think the hope is that there's not a resistance that's purely out of fear. You know, I think I feel this as someone who's into tech, who's into communications, that there's this idea that you're at the forefront, you're saying yes to everything, regardless of whether it's actually good or not, and you're not thinking it through. And actually, I think, especially those of us that are used to working with small churches, that's not the case, because we know we can't say yes to everything. We don't have the capacity to do that. But actually, my experience is that those who work in church communications are the ones thinking the most carefully, thinking it through, what it means, what are the implications, should we be doing this, not just can we do it.
I think there's a thing there, isn't there, that we need a handful of people that are, or actually a mass of people that are in the centre ground, doing what we know well, and we need the pioneers, the adventurers, to run on ahead and kind of suss out the landscape. Is it safe to move to this place yet? Is there an opportunity to do so? Is it wise to bring our people with us? You know, that kind of approach. And I think
the church comes spies.
Yeah, something on those lines. So yeah. But I think there's a need there. You need people to push the boundaries and ask the questions. And sometimes the answer is no, and sometimes it's actually yes. It's time for us to say goodbye to Twitter or X, whatever it is, and you know, go. We're going to give our attention to this thing. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah. Okay, so bringing it back to you and sort of your journey. How has it been from going sort of from a one church centered role working at the Well to, you know, working on your own business, you know, how's that shift sort of been for you? Because presumably sort of you've got different clients and suddenly it's sort of not just one focus. What's been really exciting, but also is there anything that you miss working sort of for one client?
I hands up completely. I miss the community. I miss the amazing team that are there. Like, so, you know, being around a staff team, you know, not all full-time by any standard, but I think there's about 18 people on team. So to see those people every day was one of the best teams I've ever worked with, and a life-giving community. So, and I miss the leadership and the insights, and kind of, you know, inevitably when you're part of a church staff team, you know more about the bigger picture thinking and the processes rather than just what's communicated to people. So it's nice to be part of that and things. So I miss that. But at the same time, yeah, I think, you know, there's seasons where we can't do everything, and I did that season, as it were. Stepping into the business, there's a few things that I really wanted to do. So this year, so far, it's worked out, which is an incredible blessing, is we took the decision to try and be a term time business. So I've taken the 6 weeks summer holiday off with the kids, Easter, half terms, everything, which has been incredible in terms of work-life balance. And I do think that, like, you know, in church circles, it often can be that the church minister gets a sabbatical and gets to go away and do that type of thing. And I think there's a call and a need for anybody involved in church ministry, particularly employed church ministry, to actually get that time away time away with God, time away to think, and it be a paid time rather than a part of their holiday. So I think that was a really important aspect for me, the work-life balance. Now, it meant that I worked my socks off May, June, July and things to make sure I could take the summer off. I've come back now in September and very deep in my work, which is good. And I've not really communicated that I'm doing what I'm doing, actually. It's all favour of God. Like, I've stepped into it, and all of a sudden all these people have come out of the woodwork and said, you know, could you help out with this project? And I was like, actually, yes, I can, because I'm running my own business now. So the majority of my work I'm doing at the minute is working around predominantly with churches and Christian charities. So working with Together for Sheffield, working with Arise. I'm in conversations with some quite exciting big organisations for some big projects and things, all to be revealed. And but it's exciting to go. I love communications. I love being able to work in a way which works well for me. A big believer in working from rest. So, you know, I will get far more work done by having a morning jog and potentially an evening swim or something, and actually making sure that I'm working. There's good rhythms to the way we do life and things, and I think it's just it's so healthy. We, you know, in the past, people can easily demonize time, and actually, particularly in the creative veins, we really need, for creative ideas, like the best ideas I've had for like all my projects, they come on a morning run, or, you know, I don't know, in the shower. It's you know, it's like it's never when you sit down at the desk with a pen and paper and come up with this idea. It's like, okay, great. And I think if the beauty of being self-managed in your own business is being able to actually work in a way which allows you to do your best work, and that's the core thing. It's the matters for me. It's the quality of what we put out. So yeah, I think it's been an exciting few months. It's not easy. It's a big step when you step out of the comfort of salary and hours.
Because
and things.
The rest that you're talking about, and so important, and valuing it, is in some senses easier to have when you have the security of a full-time role.
Yeah.
You know, when in some way there is a link between how much you rest and how much money you make, it's a lot harder to justify having that time to rest, but that doesn't mean it's less important. Yeah.
I found that with all the projects I was doing, I was able to work it thinking that, you know, inevitably, for example, a lot of people do naturally have summer holidays. So there's a lot of projects that we could actually do a handover at the end of July and say, you know, deadline is for September to get your parts back and stuff. So the rhythms work well in that respect, and you can kind of make things slot into place. And yeah, like broader questions here, but you know, what is wealth? Like the most valuable thing to me is the freedom of time. And there's like, I live on a quite nice road with lovely neighbours who are in senior roles in big business and stuff, and they have a nice kind of week holiday, and the rest of the time they're like working very, very hard. And they might have the nice cars and they might have nice things that we look in a worldly sense and go, oh, they've made it. But actually to kind of go, well, I had 6 weeks off work, and the hardest decision I had to make was whether to do poached eggs or scrambled eggs in the morning with the kids, like poached eggs sounds very middle class, doesn't it? I'm trying to learn how to do poached eggs. I've got a couple of chickens in the garden. A little off tangent there, but yeah, you know what I mean? It's working out if you know, in the context of what I've done, trying to deliver our best, trying to do it in a way which allows me to thrive and serve the clients really well, which is ultimately, what we're trying to do. But big thing is about, I am here to help. I want to help people thrive. So let's do that as best we can.
So we're both part of the Church Comms Collective, which you founded. Can you tell us a bit more about that? How did that come about? And I mean, obviously, if it's yours, you're going to things, but why do you think it's an important community? And I can ask it again, because that's a lot of questions, but where do you see it going? So kind of again, in that 5 years' time, where do you see sort of it, how do you see it existing?
Sure. Great questions. I love talking about the collective. I think first aspect of that to answer, why is it important? I think it's the community which makes it important. It's the fact that we're gathering around this central principle, and we're helping out each other, we're sharing knowledge. It would be it's not mine or me. It's the strength of the fact that there's people gathered to do that, and that's the beauty of it, and I love it. It's birthing, again, being honest about not knowing what we're doing sometimes. I 5-6 years ago, my first kind of church contract as a freelancer effectively was to manage my church's social media. They didn't have anybody, and I offered to do it, and I was like, oh, wow, how do we do this well? How do I take my church my communications training and knowledge and stuff and actually use that tangibly in a church context? And I set up, before I set up the group, I went on trusty old Facebook, tried to find some groups, and sure enough, there's lots of church communication groups out there. However, majority of which were based in the US. And the types of things that they were talking about and dealing with weren't culturally relevant necessarily to what was going on in the UK. Yeah. And my original idea was like, how can I connect with some of these UK folks? And I'll just look out for kind of UK-based questions. And then one day a thread started with, whereabouts are you in the world? I saw the little Union Jacks, and I thought, right, let's just DM a few folks and see if they want to set up a subgroup just to chat about.
I'm not the only one.
Yeah, chat up some things. And a handful of folks joined, and it was literally a small group. For the first 6 months, there's probably like 10 or 15 of us, to be honest. And then we happened to meet at Premier Digital. And then it built up to about 300 or 400, and then obviously COVID hit and a lot of people were needing help, and the word got out there that there was a place. But ultimately the point of it is that people in church communications, I don't know if you guys would agree with this, but often we tend to think in a way which is slightly different to the rest of the church team. We see things that they wouldn't do, which is really important. That's part of our role. And but rarely, very rarely, will a church employ or have on team like a couple of people of that ilk. And it's kind of, you're not alone if you're the church communicator at this church. There's another church down the road facing similar problems, trying to understand how to do things. And it's that thing of going, I just need someone to reach out to. And yes, there's loads of great help out there and tutorials and stuff, but no, nothing beats actually talking and connecting and actually dropping a thing in. So the principle of the collective all along has been, ask any question. It's a safe environment to do so, and also share your successes. And crucially, people find this hard to do, but share your failures. Like actually learning from each other's mistakes. We grow so much when we get things wrong. So the Facebook group. The only thing to say really is, in terms of where it's going, a couple of years ago, I was frustrated that I wanted to harness the quality of the questions and the community, but in a dream world, I wouldn't have it locked in a platform like Facebook, where there's so much of the noise that can take you away. And also in a professional setting, I personally found it hard to go on Facebook, to go into the group and ask a question without kind of seeing updates from other people and getting drawn into a rabbit hole of stuff which wasn't actually relevant to my workflow and things. And I was just so undisciplined in that process. So I tried to set it up as a standalone platform. And the complete reality was, at the time, I just did not have the capacity, like in any respect, mental health and in terms of my workload and family life, to actually give it the energy it needed. So I not that many people would know, but I folded that down because it was literally nothing going on. So I was like, let's just get rid of that. Focus on keep doing Facebook well. And the reason for that doing as well was I was conscious that you have to be on Facebook to be part of it. And there's so many communicators out there which don't want to be on Facebook and aren't. And I was like, I don't want those people. I want those people to have a place they can ask questions and be without having to be on social. So I've not quite figured out how we go about doing that, other than I've recently finished a new iteration of the Church Comms Collective website, which is designed hopefully to breathe more life into the things that beyond community conversation, links to upcoming events. It'd be great to have this podcast actually listed on there as a good resource. And but again, that's a bit of a passion project in the side. I've put in thousands of hours to Collective. It's never been something which it's not a money thing for doing it. It's my passion project. We're just trying to help people and do it well. But yeah, it's a group which are just wonderful people of every different expression, I think, of Christianity in the UK, which is another beautiful thing, sharing across different theologies and perspectives, the common core things around communications is something which we all need to learn from each other.
Well, the website is looking really lovely, and I get inspired looking at it, just going, oh, that's how I should make more of an effort on my own website. But yeah, no, it is really good. And so where do you where do you see it being in 5 years' time? Like, what would the dream be for the collective?
Sure. Well, the dream would be, I'm going to try and say this in a constructive way. One of my frustrations when I worked at CPO was it was a charity, Christian Publishing and Outreach, and it was born like 60 odd years ago and these tobacco salesmen came to faith, I believe, at a Billy Graham rally, and they bought a house together, sold up everything they had a cow, and basically used their marketing know-how to start making resources for the church. That's just like full-on Acts living right there and then, and that's what they did, and they started providing the resources. And the organisation continued to deliver amazing comms, but ultimately changed track into being, it had to be a commercial venture to actually be able to sustain itself and do what it did. And as head of innovation there, one thing I never got to do was actually implement some ideas around how we can actually make sure that the charitable element of delivering things, in my mind, for free and actually resourcing those that desperately need it could happen. And that's something I dream that can be fulfilled.
How it fits alongside paying the bills.
Yeah. And now I see and now I guess my dream would be how could the collective actually do that and actually be the charitable effect. Ultimately, I'd love it to become a not-for-profit, formally registered. I'd love to do. Catherine Burt is a great person to talk to about this, but there's some great things in America where they do these mission trips, and what they'll do is they'll go to like an underfunded rural church somewhere in America, and they'll take a videographer, copywriter, website developer, logo designer, project manager, and they'll go for a weekend, and they will smash it out, and they basically leave a church with branding, website that works, and the tools to continue it. It's not like obviously they're giving them the net so they can go fishing rather than just giving them the fish, as it were. And I love that idea. I can imagine just taking like once a year, we take again representatives of core skills, and we go, right, for this weekend we're going to this village south of Birmingham. We're going to go and bless this community and give it a weekend away, lots of pizza and all that jazz, and walk away going, wow, and that's transformed. So ideally the collective would have like that physical thing happening. I'd love to see it have like a national and localized gatherings whereby we can actually come together, high five, and go, this is tough. And
we'd love to see that as well.
Yeah, that's
yes.
One of the things here is I'm the bottleneck to this, and I need to kind of connect with people who are like, oh, I'm up for this, and just going, right, I just can't do that. I'm realizing I'm trying to do too much of my own steam because I think that people aren't interested or don't want to, and actually the people are probably like, oh no, I'd happily sort out that aspect of doing that, and that makes it more viable. So so dreams of doing that. And then, like I said, in terms of a revenue thing, like I think if we can proof of concept of changing lives and seeing churches transformed, maybe some of the trust funds out there and things will actually we understand the value and power in communicating well and what that can do, and then releasing people to actually kind of go, okay, we can invest this in providing this free communication resource for these guys. Because one of the problems is, let's be honest, is that certain church denominations are very, 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 very well funded when it comes to their church comms, but they're serving their people and their denomination and no one beyond that. And I think there's actually lessons within these places which are locked in, and it would be great to be able to go, well, let's make these things available to any church and every church so that they can flourish. And at the end of the day, it's the same boss, and I just love to make sure that there's equal opportunities across the church to do that.
I think there's something there as well in terms of priorities, and like you mentioned, that it's very rare for UK churches to have people in paid employment positions who are creatives, who are communicators, who are marketers. But it's not just the paid employment. Like, even in leadership positions, I don't see it very often. And part of that is resources and lack of people. I get that. But I think a lot of it is just not getting it, not having those things as priorities, when actually communication is a huge part of who we are as a church, because we want to communicate the gospel. And like we've spoken about, before we'd started recording today, Hannah mentioned a church that just gets it as one of her clients. And that's not to say that they're a huge mega church with a massive budget, but if they get the importance of it, then what resources they have, it's like the bread and fishes thing, right?
Yeah.
That if you get it, you can give your little and see what God can do with that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think there's a chronic failure to acknowledge the power of good communications in the church. There was this, pre-COVID, there was like, oh no, we can't go on video, that's a bit scary, can't do that, and people won't come to church anymore. Then it became the thing that everyone did, and there was this, that Tuesday when everyone, us and everyone else in church comms would have been busy trying to set up our first streams and things, and it went absolutely crazy, and the engagement was super high because no one else had anything to do. And then it all, in the most part, falls off and is the back of the list going forward, and they're not seeing the value in it and the continuity or whatever. And yes, it's hard to maintain all these things with volunteer groups and stuff, but it's kind of like, hang about, how can you not see the potential power in actually doing this well? And we fail to, it's like communications and social media and things particularly, it always seems to be this task which is handed out as an add-on to someone else's job description. It tends to be maybe the youth leader because they're young and funky, or the worship leader because they're creative and things. And it's never like, actually, wow, imagine like the churches out there that actually kind of go, the most important thing we can do is we've got our vision, our direction. The first thing we're going to invest in is actually communicating really well how this sits, what we're going to do as a people, whether that's 2 people starting a church or whether it's 1,000 people, and then working back from there to actually look at how they do stuff. And it frustrates me so much when you see, if the electrics went in the church and the spark boxes are flying out with all over the place, you wouldn't just look for some random person and say, can somebody just go and sort that out for us? There's some scissors in the kitchen, make do. And that's totally the approach that we have to church. Somebody can make a flyer, somebody can do this. And actually, who can we, if we've not got the skills, who can we empower or train? Because there's lots of free ways to do that. Who can we actually come alongside and journey with so that they can feel confident in doing this? And it just, it saddens me that, ultimately, the gospel is something which is just a communication piece. And I'm on my soapbox right now, aren't I? But we need, it's like, come on, like, how can we absolutely just...
No, but it's important.
How can we do this and love everyone in that process? Because it's always good intentions, but I just think sometimes things need to be flipped on its head.
And I think maybe we've sort of circling around uncovering one of the key difficulties of being a church communicator is that you've not just got to do it well, but actually you've got to have that battle in the first place to persuade people that it's important to do it well. I'm a big believer in youth work, but generally you don't have to have the conversation of why should we have a youth group. Generally people understand that and they get it, whereas comms is very different.
And it's hard when we're living in such an immersive communication generation, and the amount of messages we're bombarded with, and the quality of media out there. which is very daunting for people. I mean, just take, even sitting, if you're old school and you watch a bit of TV now and then, watching the adverts and the production that goes into them makes movies from a few years ago feel proper dated. It's incredible, the stuff, and the stuff that you and I, we could all do right now using AI and Photoshop beta and all that kind of stuff. We can do some incredible things. It's at our fingertips, and it's all a question of time and resource, isn't it? And but I think there's I just love to see people arise and awake to the opportunity that could present itself if those that are able to and or wanting to can rise up and actually do comms well. There's some great comms jobs out there, and there's rarely enough people to actually fulfill them. There's a skills gap, and we need to see it filled as well.
Yeah.
I think just bringing things back to the collective for a second, could you give one sort of key example of how you've clearly seen God working through that and through that community there?
The way that's most meaningful, I'd say, with God working is, I think, people feeling free to come with what's on their hearts. I remember Benj Lyon recently doing, just feeling like to pray for everybody and just to share that, and I was like, that's exactly what we need. And people that I've connected through the community that have reached out to me for prayer requests or questions and stuff, and the fact that there's a digital platform that exists where people feel the freedom to do so, and hopefully through the conversations that we have corporately as a group and also on the one-to-one basis, people can feel loved and empowered and remember who they are ultimately as children of God first off, and then actually doing this thing that they're in, we're interested in. And one final thing to say on that as well is, in the 5 or so years that we've been running it, there's probably been literally a handful of times where I've had to step in and either remove a post or take a comment out or something. It's so rare. And that to me just shows like-minded followers of Jesus pursuing this with the very best of intentions, and that's just so lovely to see in a world of where social can be so toxic at times. So that's a credit to the nature of the culture of the people that are contributing and stuff.
Yeah, that's probably because all of those people manage groups or are in groups and are just switched on to groups that they are a part of, where they are seeing that toxic, angry, whatever behaviour, and they want to be in a group where it's not like that, because it is so horrible seeing that. I'm in various groups where there's, at the minute, people are constantly talking about admins need to be removing these themes or these topics and stuff like that. It's just really sad that people can't just be nice.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, I've became so much happier when I decided not to argue anymore on social. I mean, I realised that I'd never shared an opinion which I think had changed someone's beliefs, particularly when you look at politics and stuff like that. It's fine to share your story in your context and from your platform, but I just found, because I used to get into a lot of not nasty stuff, but just genuine debates. But I was like, well, I'm just debating something. No, they're not changing my mind. I'm not changing theirs. And
you end up dragging yourself down.
Yeah, is this actually constructive? Well, so. And I realised actually the handful of times when someone I known said something, it's like, okay, great. Do you want I'm going to phone that person, or I'm going to go and see him and have a chat. And, when you do that, you talk in a way which, there's so much more harmony, and actually it's so important to work to be people of peace, isn't it? So completely separate sidetrack there, but
yeah.
And to actually communicate with people.
Yeah.
Very important to do.
So this is just also amazing to talk to you about kind of various elements of comms, and really to be able to reflect upon it, and kind of for me it's just nice hearing that we're not alone, and I'm sure we could talk all day about things, but I'm going to ask a few, to be honest they're quite big questions, but maybe to keep us all on track, because I'm sure we could go off and explore them in great depth. Just kind of respond with the first things that come to mind. So are there any trends that you've noticed with the ways that churches are communicating now, sort of specifically then obviously in the UK?
I mean, there's honestly, I don't know if I could pull out a particular trend. There's clearly churches that are setting a really high bar in terms of quality output in the context of their people. Mm-hmm. So I am genuinely inspired by the majority of the kind of HTB church plants and the way they do comms. They manage to reflect the authenticity of community and what church looks like. And I think it's actually quite attainable to do what they do. They don't do it. It seems like it's a healthy pace. It's simple, as in it's like tends to be just the photography is reasonably well thought out if you look at it from a social strategy, and it's one of the nice things about having a solid brand for your church is some folks they'll use 50 fonts a week in creating their the branding for different things, and actually it's so much more simple when you've got you header 1, header 2 and work with it. It just saves you the time of everything else around it, even more so if you're in the case of the well and you use black and white all the time. So I think just kind of helping things, simplifying things, and that is a really great thing. I think I do feel like there's a divide at the minute in terms of it's easy to put people on the pedestal in terms of what some churches are able to do, and then we can feel like that we're somehow failing if we don't meet the standard of what others are doing. And I actually think it's quite important for us to ask questions. This is the collective thing. Ask questions of others that are walking the same road. At the same time, we don't have to attain to anyone else's standard. It's about being true to the vision and legitimacy of what we're doing in our particular churches. I'm a big fan of I've used this analogy in the collective. You might have heard me say it before. I'm a park runner, so on a Saturday morning, thousands of people around the UK and beyond do a timed 5k, and you get time at the end, and it's just a nice community experience. But the thing which I find so empowering is it tends to be the same people that are kind of just behind me that are kind of on my tail and keeping me going, and the same people just ahead of me that are just helping me go that little bit quicker or sustain it. And I think the same within church communications, like how can we help those just behind us to kind of bring them up and learn how to do that thing on TikTok, or learn how to do a short or whatever it might be. At the same time, we're learning from those guys just ahead of us and taking that knowledge and applying it in our context. And I think I'd love to see smaller churches and local communities that probably do like community life really well have the confidence to be able to think, how can they communicate that more effectively in their context? Because there's so many churches out there which do actually church really well, but maybe no one really knows that they do it well because they don't have maybe the confidence to kind of go, we can like do a really great church banner which is actually going to last 2 or 3 years and roll out at key times, or we can actually just do a simple digital video on a phone which we can be shared on the local Facebook page and let them know that they're really welcome here and we offer this, this and this. And do you know what I mean? Like you can overthink things, and actually just doing things with the best of hearts sometimes whilst applying some simple rules is really effective.
Yeah. No.
I think I've definitely said this before, but I liken it to a cheap business card. And if you have a floppy business card, it looks like you have a floppy business. It doesn't matter how good you are. And so that church that has an amazing community effort, they do amazing things with outreach. If you're not sharing it, then people aren't going to know.
Yeah. Floppy business card.
Okay, let's be a bit more optimistic then. What are the biggest opportunities for churches and their comms?
I think the biggest opportunity is actually to talk about it more. I don't think we do that. I can't remember ever going into a church and hearing someone stand up at any point, like in the notices, or a church leader, actually talk about the power of digital discipleship and digital witness, or the fact that you can go out there right now, live stream, and share your testimony and potentially reach millions of people. I know that's not that likely, that doesn't matter, but there's the potential that these things can happen. And I think we need to talk about more of actually I find this, it always seems to me there's lots of different church meetings happening, about different ways to disciple people and different kind of methods to go about, doing team meetings to make them more effective. But it seems very, very rare that we ever have constructive conversations about the communication opportunities that are presented to the family within the church to actually how to do it well. So I think one of the best things is actually start talking about this more and understanding that. And again, that doesn't have to be developing or modern digital media. In some contexts it could be really effective print forms, and communication extends to everything. Like, this is crazy, but I was thinking about this the other day, and I was just thinking about, it starts with, if you're in a church context, the type of toilet paper we use in our churches says something about our people, doesn't it? And the type of soap we use. So, for example, during COVID, if you would use the most bacterial killing super stuff to let everyone know you care, because you're providing something which is making sure the disease is suppressed and that they're safe in that context. And obviously hygiene is really important, but also now you can think about, well, actually, what does that job? It actually smells good, and then people actually feel, I feel good. I feel fresh and ready for a new conversation now. And it's these tiny things which actually say a lot about who we are, and we don't think about those things. And so I think every aspect, and again, having someone who's got a bit of a head for comms and actually saying, okay, it crosses welcome, it crosses how you do your tea and biscuits afterwards, back to the biscuits. It comes down to all aspects of things. So but there's so much opportunity. I think if we just talk about it more, like, what are we communicating here? How are we saying this? Is that choice of colour appropriate for that season? Is the facility we've got, what are they communicating to the people that come into here? Even down to the type of, let's go back to biscuits. Would an extra 50p to upgrade it from that, to insert a chocolate chip or something, maybe that gives it that little more of like, that was a great biscuit experience this morning. I feel, rather than the 10p packet or whatever.
Ben's finally unpacked why we asked the biscuit question.
There we go.
It wasn't just a frivolous question that we threw in as an icebreaker.
It's an actual. I don't want to say the theology of church service biscuits, but I completely agree. I think you were part of the conversation 2 years ago or something on Twitter. I know Pete Murden was as well, but of going like serving good coffee. That is actually an important. How's that? Serving rubbish coffee, that gives a certain impression. But biscuits, we at my old church, we used to have a joke of like, if there were the viscounts, so the really nice ones that are covered and stuff like that, you go, oh, the bishop's coming to church, and like it was very rare for the nice biscuits to be out, but everyone sort of like was very excited when they were. And it's sort of that relayed a kind of a nice feeling about church.
I think that's helpful though, because I think even those of us who do talk about comms, we probably do define it too narrowly, and we probably define it by the things that we're most excited about, whether that's social media or web or design or whatever. But actually, it's all those different parts and what they communicate to people who come in.
I think on the opportunity front as well, and this is something that I never quite figured out how to do this well, but I know it needs to be done more. This might be a generational thing as well as we move towards it, but I think the most engaging, most powerful content when we look at church social media and things is when people do tell their stories and their context of actually what's going on or what's God doing or what they're working through, and again, successes and the failures and the prayers they're waiting to see answered and the ones that are, and actually capturing, harnessing those stories. People listen to people in the generation of the self, and whether we like it or not, again, it's communicating contextually in this era. There's something powerful about, this is my personal testimony, this is what Jesus has done, this is the revelation I've had. And if there's ways in which it's an opportunity, the more we can capture them, and it doesn't have to be super slick. It's, we're talking, we're used to having bite-sized pieces of content on our mobile, so just people aren't gagging for a Hollywood production here. It's the authenticity of the story. So where we can capture them, oh my goodness, if every church across this land was to capture 10 stories or something and put out one every few weeks or whatever, whoa, can you imagine? Saturate the World Wide Web with truth and real real stories of hope and journeying with our faith.
Yeah, for sure.
Love that. So if you could give one piece of advice, what would be the biggest tip you'd give to a church comms person? Like, I suppose, anything from day-to-day management, an idea or something. What would be the one thing that you had to just share with someone?
I had a lady come over yesterday to our house to meet myself and my wife, called Lucy, who was working for a church in Sheffield as the comms, and she asked that question. And the thing that struck me the most, and more, is to understand that our role as a church communicator isn't we're serving the church, we're serving God, we're serving the leader and the vision team. And that, I think, is the big thing here. Is our role is to hear the vision, hear what we're doing as a church community, and looking at the way that we can translate that and facilitate that through excellent communication. Now, there will be times when we challenge them and say, I really don't think that Facebook is the best way to communicate this, or I really don't think a poster should be done for that. And they need to understand your role in actually having the insights to suggest ways about going and doing this. And I'm talking about somebody who's got, time and empowerment to actually be able to be released in this. And church leaders need to empower and release people with the gifting of communication to do this. But yet our role isn't to change the leader and their direction and stuff and things. It's ultimately to serve that with great communications. And from that place, we then build that simple strategy of like, okay, cool, I've got 5 hours a week to do this. What am I going to do? Really simple brand in place so that it makes the creation of graphics really simple and straightforward, using free platforms like Canva, so that can be done really economically, making sure that we put it out there to welcome in volunteers who might be able to give certain skills to do it, and building it out as the availability sits. But that core thing for me is you've got to walk hand in hand with a vision caster and be able to, as a communicator, your job is to communicate and make sure that things are on point with the direction of the church. And churches, I feel like when we actually really grasp well that everyone is completely unique in terms of its locality, in terms of the people that are in the vicinity and how we can serve them, that all those expressions, there'll be common traits, but there's also uniqueness which we can pull out in that process. So the big thing ultimately is making sure that we help discern and communicate that vision.
Yeah, that's really important.
Love it.
Ben, thanks so much for joining us today. As Hannah said, I'm sure we could go on all day, and already we've doubled the time that we said that we were going to keep you for. So do tell us where where people can find out more about you, where they can find out more about the collective.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Anyone who's listened in, if you want to reach out, I'm not just saying this to be fluffy, like genuinely reach out, and if we can have a chat, we will. But best place to get hold of what in terms of what this is church communications, so churchcommscollective.com. From there, there'll be links to Facebook, Instagram, in this contact form, so you can reach out directly. And if there's a professional project you want to work with, then it's becreative.team. But the big thing here is Church Comms Collective. And yeah, it might be you're someone who's got an idea about how to actually make that a sustainable thing for the good of the church in the UK, and that would, like, you might have an idea, whatever it is, small or big, like, don't sit on it. If it's something triggered, then I'd love to hear it, because it's those things which all come together, and at some point the right thing will open up what that future looks like.
So yeah, thank you. I've got so much just going through my brain now. I'm gonna have to definitely re-listen to this episode, because that's just been so much wisdom and insight and excitement. I'm excited for the future. So yeah, thank you so much, Ben, for joining us, and thank you to our listeners for listening, and we will see you all soon.
Wow, I feel like you need to take a deep breath after that.
Oh gosh, yes, definitely. There was such an encouraging chat, and I'm already got loads of things going through my mind, and definitely I'm going to need time to reflect on everything that we chatted about. It's actually been a really nice way to round off what has been, for me, I mean, all the other series have been great as well, but this has been a really sort of interesting series for me. I think that we've sort of thought a little bit wider and actually started to think of other people's perspectives as well, which, as well as really continuing to get closer to the hearts of what comms is, and thinking about how to actually do it well. And it's been also very encouraging and lovely to hear from listeners to say that it's actually been helpful, you know, and getting ideas and inputs for future episodes. So it's, for me, this series has been a real delight.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've definitely loved to hear from people, and specifically we really enjoyed, it was back a while ago now, but the case study episode that we did. So if that's something that you'd be interested in doing with your church in the future, you know, send us a message. You can email at hello@gppodcast.uk, and we'll look at getting that set up. But sadly, that does bring us to the end of series 3. We already have a huge list of things to talk about in future episodes, though, and to be honest, series 4 is all but planned already.
Yep.
So we're going to take a little break, and we'll be back with you soon. But we want to say thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing the podcast with other people, and as ever, we really pray that your comms are fruitful.